Bienvenidos, bienvenidas, amigos y amigas, al Rincón del Profe Jeff. Welcome to our next episode in our journey through Latin America and Spanish-speaking countries. As you can tell by today's hat, this is one of my favorites in the collection. We're going to visit Mexico. I think it's pretty cool because it has the 3D letters there on the front part, but also it's got in the middle here the emblem and the colors of the Mexican flag. So we're going to talk about that real quick before we get into this episode. It's going to be a little bit different. What we're going to do here in a minute is I'm going to share some video that I shot when I took on one of my trips to Mexico when I was visiting different places on behalf of the school, and took a little time to go check out some of the ruins there. So I've been looking forward to that. We'll discover a little bit about that. But first off, as we normally do, we'll jump to the map and kind of see where we're at. Here, Mexico is actually considered part of North America. People sometimes mistake it for being part of Central America, but it's actually part of North America with the United States and Canada. Capital, of course, is Mexico City. Now, we can't cover all of Mexico, obviously, in one episode, so we'll do different ones as time allows and as the subject matter pops up. But just to give you a little bit, I've traveled a lot to Mexico, especially since we're up here in Las Cruces, and Ciudad Juarez is right there. Many people claim it's not part of Mexico, but it is. That's my belief, and we've uh, been to Ciudad Juarez many times. I can't even count the number of times we've been to enjoy things there. But on a couple of occasions, I've been to different parts. We'll just say those now, and then we'll get into our visit to Mexico City in particular. Since I visit places for study abroad programs here at NMSU, one time I took a bus from actually El Paso over to Juarez, and then got a bus from Juarez and traveled down to one of our schools was in Zacatecas, which is kind of in north central Mexico right here. We stopped in Chihuahua and Durango and Torreon on the way down, and so I got to experience all of what it's like to travel through Mexico. And then from there, took a plane from Zacatecas to Mexico City and visited another school that we have on the outskirts of Mexico City in Cuernavaca, a pretty famous place. At another point, I went to Mexico City by itself, and that's where some of the footage that we'll see today comes to visit the UNAM, and I'm going to do an episode just on the UNAM. UNAM is the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico, the National University of Mexico. Wonderful place, and if you're a student and look for somewhere to study abroad, that's an awesome place to go. And then I guess most recently visited Guadalajara here for a conference with the AATSP. So one of the places I haven't been yet is over here in Yucatan. Of course, that'd be a fun place to go to see some of the ruins and culture along the coast. I know many people have traveled to Cancun, places like that. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump into to Mexico City, Ciudad de Mexico. Some people, it used to be called, and people still call it that, El DF or Distrito Federal, the federal district, kind of like saying DC for us in the United States. But now, as we speak today, it's known as Mexico City. The original city was actually a city by the name of Tenochtitlan, which was established by the Mexica culture. We also know them as the Aztecs or Aztecas. And that's where the emblem that you can see on my hat here and also on the flag back here comes into play. And so the legend of the establishment of Mexico City is that as the Mexicas were looking for a place to live, uh, chief god, whose name in Nahuatl is Huitzilopochtli, and I probably hammered that, but that's the best I can do. My tongue sometimes doesn't work. So Huitzilopochtli gave them a vision, and this emblem, which you see on the screen now, is the vision that they gave, that the people were given. And what it included was the águila, the eagle here, with a serpiente, the serpent in the claws and mouth. And the águila was perched on the prickly pear cactus, or what we call in Spanish nopales. And those nopales were found on, you can see, an island right here on some land in the middle of a big lake. Okay. And so when they saw that vision come to fruition, that's where they were to establish their city, and that happens to be right by Mexico City. The lake's name is Lago Texcoco, and so the city was established here in what we call modern day Ciudad de Mexico. Now, official founding, the dates are not, you know, I guess not accurate, but somehow it was established that in 1325, this was done back, I was reading up on it, in 1925, they established the year 1325 as the year that Tenochtitlan, Mexico City, was established, so they could celebrate the 600-year anniversary in the 1300s. Okay, all right, so, and we'll do a whole nother episode, like I said, on just visiting Mexico City, but today's we're going to concentrate on a culture that was even before the Mexicas or Aztecs, and that's by visiting a place which is about 50 kilometers, 25 miles-ish north of Mexico City, in a place called Teotihuacán. And these are some of the most famous pyramids in Mexico. The Pirámide del Sol, Pyramid of the Sun, Pirámide de la Luna, the Pyramid of the Moon, and then we're going to also look at the Templo de Quetzalcoatl. Right. So just zooming in, when I went to visit the ruins here after I completed my visits to the places that I went to in Mexico City, it took about 45 minutes, an hour to drive from Mexico City up to Teotihuacan, and that's mostly because of the traffic. If any of you have ever been to Mexico City, the traffic is horrendous, so you have to plan lots of time to travel. But this is what's known as the Pirámides de Teotihuacán. We're going to switch views so you can kind of get a little better grasp of what's going on. And what we're going to do is we're going to visit this complex, and I've got videos of each of the pyramides that are here, and also the Templo de Quetzalcoatl. And as we watch those videos, I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of the places. So you can see that it's the thing that impressed me the most, and you'll see it in the footage. And of course, there's probably better footage than mine that's out here, but one part of it is unique, and we'll get to that in a second. But as usual, there are videos in the video description, so you can capture the grandeur and just the impressive nature of these ruins. And that's what stood out to me the most when I got here. You know, you see it in pictures, you see it in YouTube videos, but for those of you who may have been there, share your comments on your visits there, correct things that I may have mistaken. But just the enormity, the grandeur, it's just such, it can't be expressed with words. You kind of have to, it's one of those things you kind of have to experience to see. And I told one of my classes that as a person walking amongst these huge pyramids, I felt like an hormiga, a little ant, as you go around. Okay, so this main highway or main road that runs right down the middle, and this is in the north where the Pirámide de la Luna is. Pirámide del Sol is kind of in the middle, and then on the southern end is the Templo de Quetzalcoatl. This is called the Calzada de los Muertos. Now, all of these names were given to this place by the Mexicas or the Aztecs because these the dates that they've established for when these ruins were inhabited date from about 100 years before Christ, 100 years BC, to about 500 to 700, about 7th century after AD, right? So it was well before the Mexicas got there, but as they were exploring, they came and found this place. And they actually were the ones who named it Teotihuacán, which is translated as the place where the gods were created. And so that's where we'll jump off there. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to visit different, so these videos were shot several years ago. I was learning how to use a GoPro that I'd acquired. And so I thought, I've seen all these videos of Teotihuacan and the pyramids and pictures, and they're all awesome. And I wanted to show the perspective of someone who went there to visit and maybe climbed them and actually went step by step up the pyramids. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to walk down the Calzada de los Muertos for a little bit, and then up and down each of the pyramids, and we can talk about them as we go. Okay, so I hope you enjoy that part. There's not going to be any sound because there's a lot of rustling with the GoPro. So we'll get started. You get this queued up here. So this is a video taken in the middle of the Calzada de los Muertos, facing the Pirámide del Sol, the Pyramid of the Sun. So that would be looking to the east. And this is called the Plaza del Sol. Okay. And I'll say some things as we go about around, especially on the place that we're standing in or looking at, so you can get a little familiar with it. So as I said, this is the Calzada de los Muertos, the Road of the Dead. And you'll see that at the north end is the Pyramid of the Moon, Pirámide de la Luna. And on the sides, the Mexicas thought they were religious places. It is a religious center. It was probably places where ceremonies were taken. These people probably think I was stalking them. But from one end to the next, where it starts and where it ends, is about 2 kilometers. So that's about a mile. And when you go there, there is no transportation. You have to walk. And so that's what we did on this day. We walked up from the south towards the north. The Pirámide del Sol is about halfway in between. But like we were saying, this is kind of the main street, as it were, and probably served as any main street would in any city or town that, religious processions took place. It's a symbol, since it has the sun and the moon. It's a symbol that connects Earth with the heavens and other things like that. So as you can tell here, it's a pretty impressive sight. All right, so I'm going to take you through how, since we came up, we started in on the Calzada de los Muertos. We're now going to go up the Pirámide del Sol, which is over here. Let me cue that video up, and as we do that, we'll talk about, as you saw in that picture, it has kind of 3 stages, and it was built over, several hundred years, because you can't do that all in one time. And I saw somewhere, I'm not sure if this is official, and I didn't count, but it's got somewhere around 250-ish steps from the bottom to the top. But you'll see that the first steps are wider ones as far as how many people can go up. And they're actually pretty deep steps, so you're taking big steps as you get up there. And then you'll get to another level, and at the second level you'll see that there are 2 pathways that go up, and then on the third level there's just one pathway that goes up to the top. So let's get this one ready, and here we go with the first stage. You can see my hat there, checking out to make sure the camera's on. Now, a couple of facts about the Pirámide del Sol. One of the important dates that it features is, and a lot of people go to visit it on the 21st of March, which is the spring equinox. That's when the sun passes from the southern to the northern back hemisphere. And so there's since it's a spiritual center, a lot of people go there to feel the energy, the sun's energy. And as a matter of fact, this was in October, so it was nowhere near any of those dates. There were a lot of people there. It was a weekend. But one of the things to do when you get on top is there's a little point, a little indicator that's kind of right in the middle of the top of the pyramid, and people go to touch it to get the maximum amount of energy. Okay, let's cue up the next one. So if I don't know if you noticed the time there, but it's just about a minute. That was non-stop, a minute, not running up because I couldn't run. There's some kids that you'll probably see in some of these other ones that are cruising up the steps. But it's not an easy feat, I'll tell you that. So, okay, so now we're going on to the second level, which were the 2 stairways. For walking up and walking down modernly, I don't know exactly what they were used for back in the day. Not a lot is known about the people that lived here. As we said, they predate the Mexicas, and in the 7th century, whether it was for climate reasons or economic reasons or famine, or whether it was an illness, there is no evidence there's evidence that they left behind, but no one knows exactly who the people were or where they went. There's some speculation and some tries on naming the culture that lived here and worshipped here, but there's nothing that has been definitive about it. All right, here we go. There you see my head again. And up we go. When I've shown this to my classes, I've said, since I gave it this perspective, you'll see a lot of butts. So I read somewhere also that on the inside of the Pirámide del Sol is an artificial cave that possibly signifies, in Espanol it's called el ombligo del mundo, the belly button of the earth, because as the Mexicas or Aztecs said, this is where the gods were born or created. So, all right, there we made it up the second half. It's just under a minute of climbing. As you may or may not have noticed, it gets a little bit steeper and steeper as we go. So let's jump on to the third level, which will take us to the top. And we can see the view from up there. You'll notice in this one, as I cue it up and get it started, that it's super steep at the beginning. It's almost like climbing a ladder, but then it flattens out. So there, look at the camera. All right, here we go. Lots more people going up. So it's pretty crowded. You see there on the side, I'm using my hand to support myself. And just these few steep steps, and then it kind of flattens out to where you get on the top. And this is kind of, it's not the official top here. You just have to queue up and wait in line till you get to the top. You see people sitting up there on the top of the pyramid. When we get to the top, I'll pan around and you can see that it's like being on top of a mountain. And obviously impressive. One of the things that I read about, it's not represented here, is that this was actually just kind of the base for a temple that was actually built on the top. So who knows how much further it actually goes up in as far as height goes. As far as official measurements, what I found, I obviously didn't measure it when I was there or count the steps, but I'm going to give it to you in meters since that's what measurement we use in Mexico, and it's about 65 meters tall. So what's that? Probably almost 200 feet tall. At the time, it was considered the third tallest pyramid in the ancient world. There you can see we get to the unofficial top. The little mound is the top, and we turn around there to see. You can see down there the Plaza del Sol, and there's a mountain. You're almost looking straight across to the top, and you see the Calzada de los Muertos right there, and then to the north, the Pirámide de la Luna. So, when you're on the top, you try and imagine what else would have been there, with the temple built on the top, and what kind of celebrations or ceremonies they had. In a minute, we'll talk about a few of those. But since we're on the top, let's get started going back down, because back down is usually a lot easier, but it also gives us a different perspective, which is one of our items of culture, right? In perspectiva. Okay, so here we go on the way down, give it a different look. They have these cables and things for people to go up and down now. There are different times when they have opened and closed the pyramids for climbing. I understand that now, so this was a little bit over 10 years ago, that nowadays you can't even climb the pyramids for different reasons. Obviously, they're aging, but also, you saw people as we were coming up that you kind of have to be in some pretty good physical condition. I just realized that I hadn't switched on the screen. Sorry for the technical difficulties, so we'll go back up and do it again. There we go, coming down. Just pretend you remember what all I just said about coming back down. Visiting about, again, whether you can climb them or not. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to film this. I had heard in the past that as they're restoring things, that you can sometimes climb, and other times it's not available. Fortunately, I was there when it was available. So that's the first leg down. Let's jump into the second leg down. Notice that the steps just keep getting wider and wider. So as we keep waiting, this gets to the steep part when you're coming down. Of course, this didn't show from the top. Those are videos that others have shown and can be seen. So you got to take a rest after you get up there, obviously, and get the workout for the day. Again, that's called the Plaza del Sol in the middle and the Calzada de los Muertos. Let me make sure from my notes that I've covered everything from the Pirámide del Sol. One thing that's interesting about it is that as far as its alignment, and that kind of goes with the road that you see straight in front of you, that it's aligned right in the middle, not necessarily in the middle, but in the Calzada de los Muertos, where the sun passes overhead during the summer equinox, summer solstice, not equinox. Equinox is fall and spring. And so it's lined up where the sun sets on the summer solstice on the 21st of June. So they obviously had observed the patterns of the stars and the path of the sun. So very good at the celestial or heavenly things. All right, so here's our last one. These are the big steps coming down from this second level as we make it back into the Plaza del Sol. And one last thing that I did read somewhere is that we picture these and we see these as the rocks and structures that they are, but during the time one source said that the Pirámide del Sol was actually covered with stucco, so everywhere the steps weren't, it was smoothed out with stucco, and it was actually tinted or painted red. So that would be an impressive sight to see the whole Pirámide del Sol covered in red. Had to zigzag getting down for people, but also because my legs were getting tired. And there we made it, all the way back down. Cool. All right. Well, our next stop will be on the northern end of the Calzada de los Muertos. We're going to go visit the Pirámide de la Luna. Now, when I was there, you couldn't go all the way up like you could on the Pirámide del Sol. So we're going to go here to see that. You'll catch my head in there to begin with. It seemed a little bit steeper. The steps were smaller, so you couldn't actually put your foot all the way on it. I tried going up without use of the cable. You can see my hand going out there, maybe on the right. It's actually covered up by my square right now, but you'll see that you can see that in their renovations, they've added things. Those small pebbles in the mortar there are not original. That's what they did to help preserve. it's a little shorter by about 20 meters than the Pirámide del Sol, so it's about 45 meters tall. Not as big in the around the base either. The belief is that this was built for worshiping the female deity who related to water and fertility, which is always associated with the moon. We'll come back to that view in a second because it gives a good view of the rest of the complex. There you see a group. There, many religious groups go to both these temples still to meditate and experience the energy that's there. You can see there we're barred from going up any further, but again, it looks like any of the mountains there. Now, I'm going to run back here a little bit if I can. I want to go back to this spot where we were looking. There we go. Looking down. So this is north looking south. You can see the Pirámide del Sol. You can see the other platforms, which were likely used for other ceremonies. We can say in this place and in other places in the complex, and especially in the next templo that we're going to visit, that there's evidence of human and animal sacrifices as part of their religious practices, and lots of obsidian artifacts. In fact, when you come in and out of the complex, there are all kinds of shops where you can buy replicas of all the pyramids and some of the figures that are prominent in this area. Okay, well, let's take the journey back down real quick. Okay, here we go, back down. This would be called the Plaza de la Luna. Remember, the Plaza del Sol was right in the middle of right in front of the Pirámide del Sol. Taking it slow back down. It seemed a little, I mean, it was steeper than the first stage of the Pirámide del Sol. You can see they're doing some renovations. I'm sure they're done by now, but they're always working on different parts of these to maintain them for future generations. Oh, sorry. I don't know how many visitors go on a typical day or at different times. But one thing we can say as far as size, some estimates say that there are probably around between 100, 150,000, maybe 200,000 people that lived in the city and the roundabouts areas. So some of these other structures that we saw lining the Calzada de los Muertos, we talked about, could have been used for religious ceremonies, but also were perhaps also included the houses of the upper elite of the society that inhabited the city and the roundabout areas. Okay, so this last part we're going to go visit the Templo de Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent. It was the chief god of these people, kind of connecting the heavens and the earth. There are a lot of legends about that. We're not going to delve into that now. That's if you'd like to share what you know about it in the comments, that's great. I'll put some things there as well, but we could spend a whole class just talking about deity in the early uh, peoples and cultures of Mexico. So this was the shortest hike, biggest steps, and we'll get up to the platform. From what I've read, this is where some of the biggest numbers of human sacrifices were found. They have evidence in this place alone of around 200 human sacrifices that were probably warriors, which probably meant this was not just a religious and ceremonial place, but also a military place. So it's at the southern end of the Calzada de los Muertos. Okay, well, I did a panoramic view from on top, so not to leave you stuck there. We'll bring that one up so we can kind of get a view. Since we did the panorama from on top of the Pirámide del Sol, we'll do it here with Templo de Quetzalcoatl to give us a kind of perspective of where we're at. This is also called the Citadel or Ciudadela, so lots of things probably happened in this area. That Ciudadela is always a name that's associated with military things. Okay, there you see in the north the Pirámide del Sol, and up at the end the Pirámide de la Luna. So we're at the southern end of the Calzada de los Muertos. And just panning around. I didn't film going down into those steps, but I'll show you a image when we're done of what it is, because all around the base, and it's just because the GoPro doesn't do well with up close things, but down in those places you'll see the image of Quetzalcoatl, which I'll show you in a sec here. I'll pull that up and then we'll do the trip down. So this is what are found down those steps around the base of the Templo de Quetzalcoatl. This is the feathered serpent. So you see the serpent head with feathers around, and you can actually see on this some color in the rock as they restore it. They find out those things, and based on descriptions. So that's what and there are all kinds of imagery, images and things done of what Quetzalcoatl looks like, the feathered serpent. Okay, we'll queue up the last video here, and this is the descent now from the Templo de Quetzalcoatl. It was a good way to end it. A little tired after going up and down all those. This stage in life I didn't have a phone that counted steps or a Fitbit, as if those things still exist, but you'll see this guy on my left was with me in a lot of those. He was the gentleman who drove me from Mexico City up to kind of like the Uber of the day. That was, I think, before Uber existed. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that. I know that, as I shared about at the beginning, the feeling that you get when you're there is one of awe because of the magnificence of the structures and just where you're at. It's no wonder that it's one of the World Heritage Sites for UNESCO for many years now. And the feeling that you get as you're there, understanding that these places have been in existence for thousands of years, and you're here uh, just soaking in what may have happened in those places. As we think of what was there, obviously it was a place for their worshiping the sun and the moon, and uh, not a lot of evidence. Obviously, there were people that lived and had families and had their lives there, and they fought wars and things like that. Again, not a lot known about the history of this particular place. So I hope you enjoyed at least that aspect of it, walking up and down with me. Some people think it's a little corny, but I actually enjoy doing it. Hope you do as well. Just remembering that, as we study these cultures, we need to understand things from their perspective, and if we can, understanding that their way of worshiping may have been different from what we and how we worship now. So, well, again, hope you enjoyed it. Leave your questions, comments, and your experiences with Teotihuacan and other places like it as you've had those experiences. And we'll just say adios and hasta la próxima.